before the rain, so it's easier. I'm Vanessa Kaczarginski, Deputy Director General of the Press Lab, and I'm happy to host Brigadier General Reserve Yossi Kuperwasser for our briefing about Israel and the Middle East 2018 geostrategic overview. So, of course, Yossi is the Senior Project Manager at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, past roles Director General at the Ministry of International Affairs and Strategy, and many, many more very important roles. We will start with a brief about how you see the recent developments in our region, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Vanessa. Welcome to everybody. Should I sit or no? I was asked to speak about what's going to happen in the Middle East in 2018. I used to be the head of the Military Intelligence Research and Analysis Division, and I used to do that every year. And believe me, I don't think that I was much better equipped then than I am today to say anything about the future, because nobody knows the future. Yeah. But nevertheless, I'll try to, from my experience, my knowledge of this region, to say a few words about it. And let me just start by saying that you cannot forecast what's going to happen in the Middle East without understanding what's going on around us, because definitely we are going to be impacted by what's going to happen around the world. Elections are coming, midterm elections are coming in the United States, going to have an impact on the way 2018 is going to look in Washington, and it's an important issue for Israel. North Korea situation is something that is very important for Israel, not directly but indirectly, of course, very important, going to have an impact. And nobody knows how much terrorism the world scene is going to suffer in 2018. And of course, every terror attack has an impact, and you cannot really know, because definitely terrorists will continue, especially radical Islamic terrorists, will continue to try and carry out terror attacks. And you never know how many of those are going to be successful or not. There's clearly some sort of a learning curve, positive learning curve on behalf of the security services around the world. They are more successful than they used to be in thwarting terror attacks. But this doesn't guarantee anything, and there's a learning curve also on the other side. So you never know how this is going to play. Having said that, I want to focus not on those chaotic elements around us, but on the Middle East itself. And the Middle East is now caught, and this was 2017, in the midst of a huge change in the balance of power between the different players in the Middle East, because one thing that happened that affects everything in the world, but also affects the Middle East, and this is President Trump. What did President Trump that changed the Middle East in 2017? First of all, in the real battle that happens in the Middle East between the four groups that are trying to dominate the Middle East, President Trump shifted the American support from one group to another. And this caused a lot of changes in the Middle East that we are experiencing right now. And let me explain what am I referring to. Basically, the Middle East is caught for a long time, and ever more so since the beginning of the regional upheaval in 2011, more or less, in a fight between two major schools of thought. One is the pragmatic school of thought, Muslim pragmatic school of thought, that says maybe we don't like very much the world order, we realize that we are lagging behind, but there is little we can do in order to change the world order. So the best thing for us is to catch up and become competitive in this prevailing world order that is dominated by Western culture and Western dominance. We don't like it. The Western culture is contradictory to many of the things we believe in, but we are not able to change it, so let's, if you can't win them, join them. And since our culture is already some mixture between the original Islamic culture and Western culture, we like it this way, let's leave it this way. Let's stick to our new culture, modern culture. And on the other hand, there are the radicals who say the reason why we are lagging behind is not that we didn't make necessary changes that would enable us to compete, but the reason is that we left our fundamentals, and we have to go back to the fundamentals. And there is no way for us to accept this world order based on the, let's say, hedonistic Western culture. We have to go back to the fundamentals of Islam. And the sooner we change the world order so that it will be based on the, if you can...
Yeah, it's a reminder for everybody to switch to silent mode, please.
And the sooner we can do it, the better it is. And between us, say these people who believe in this radical school of thought, the West is getting weaker every day. So our chances to change the world order are good. We have to fight those Westerners. We have to fight their agents in the Middle East, those pragmatists, to open the doors for the infiltration of the Western culture. And if we manage to overcome those groups, we shall be able to change the world order. Maybe first we should change the regional order, and then we'll change the rest of the world order. Now, inside, among the radicals, there are, I would say, three major groups. They share the same idea, but they have differences on other issues. First of all, there's a big group of what I call realistic radicals. And these realistic radicals say we have to change the world order as soon as possible, but between us, we are not strong enough in order to change the world order right now. We need more time. We have to prepare ourselves, and in this time, the West is going to become even weaker. The supporters of the West in the Middle East are going to become even weaker. We are going to gain power, and when the time is right, we shall move forward. Those realistic radicals, you know them both on the Shiite side and on the Sunni side. On the Sunni side, you know them under the name of Muslim Brotherhood. And they control two major states that are very important in the Middle East. One is Qatar, and the other is Turkey. They used to control another state called Egypt, but they lost it. They even control a certain quasi-state called Gaza. That's another place they actually rule. These are the Muslim Brotherhood. And on the Shia side, you know them by the more pragmatic element within the Iranian regime. Basically, the supporters of the late Rafsanjani, and today they are led by Rouhani and Zarif, and these people that say, we want to change the world order, but we are not strong enough. What we need in order to change the world order, the regional order, the world order later on, is a nuclear weapon. And since we cannot get the nuclear weapon right now, we should work out a way to get the nuclear weapon later on. The sooner the better, but when it's possible, not when it's not possible. You have to be realistic, as I call them, realistic radicals. Okay? On top of them, we have two other groups. We have the ultra-radical, the Sunni ultra-radicals. You know them as ISIS and Al-Qaeda and so on and so forth. Many other groups are in the same group. And we have the Shiite ultra-radical. You know them as IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and many other groups that work with the IRGC around the Middle East, and they are very powerful, as you probably can see for everything that's happening in the region. Until 2016, the West, if you judge the behavior of people, according, and I'm an economist, so I used to do that, if you judge the behavior of people and their preferences by what they do, what they call in economics revealed preference, doesn't matter what they say, look at what they do. Then you come to the conclusion, the West, until 2016, thought that the realistic radicals were its best partner in the Middle East. And there was a good match between the realistic radicals and the Westerners. The West thought that, okay, these guys don't want to kill us right now. They don't believe that it's a good idea to kill us right now. Moreover, these guys are ready to fight against the ultra-radicals who do want to kill us right now. Because the difference between the ultra-radicals and the realistic radicals was that the realistic radicals thought that going to war right now against the West is premature and dangerous for Islam, for the Islamic powers. If you go to the war before you're well prepared, you're going to lose the war. That's why they were very much against the ideology of the ultra-radicals who said, let's go to war immediately, without any hesitation, even if you are not totally prepared. Our zeal, our support of Allah, all of those things will compensate for our weaknesses. And look, we are able to form the Islamic Caliphate, Islamic State. We are powerful enough in order to challenge the world order. The realistic radicals thought that this was a mistake, this was a dream. It's not going to come true. And because of that, they were ready to cooperate with the West, and the West was ready to cooperate with them. So that they will do those things that all agree that the West doesn't want to do, because the West doesn't want to risk people. The ideology of the West, this problematic culture of the West, is unacceptable to the radicals, says that the three things that are really important are life, liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. All of these are totally contradictory to the way of thinking of Islamic radicals. Life is totally unimportant. Only life in the next world is important. Liberty, meaning that you decide for yourself about what is wrong and what is right, stands in contradiction with the entire perception of Sharia. Those things were decided by the Lord. It's not up to you to decide. And the right to pursue happiness is the worst, because happiness on this earth is totally unimportant. The only happiness that matters is the happiness in the next world, in heaven, paradise. And if you fight for Allah in this world, then you'll get special treatment in the next world. So this was totally unacceptable for the radicals, but the realistic radicals thought, oh, these guys, they want life so much. We shall fight for them, and they will give us what we need, the time needed in order to prepare ourselves to the battle that will be launched later on. And the Iranian deal, the Iranian nuclear deal in 2015 was the culmination of this entire match between the West and the realistic radicals, especially the Shiite realistic radicals in this matter. But the same sort of happened with the Sunni realistic radicals. We saw a lot of warmth in the relations between the West and the Muslim Brotherhood, were well accepted around the world at the time. Here comes President Trump, and he says, wrong, let's change it. We cannot rely on the realistic radicals, and we cannot serve and cater to the realistic radicals. The realistic radicals eventually want to change the world order. What are we doing? Let's cooperate with the pragmatists, those who want to be integrated into the world order, not fight against it. And the first thing he does, he goes to Saudi Arabia. And he explains it to the Saudis and says, and brings a lot of pragmatists, and say, I'm with you. You have my back. And, well, I have your back. Immediately what happens because of that is that Saudi Arabia leads the pragmatists in an effort to put pressure on the major stronghold of the realistic radicals, Qatar, and Al Jazeera. And many people say, well, what's going on? Why do they fight? They fight about who's going to dominate the Middle East. Is it the radicals or the pragmatists? Same with the relations with Turkey. Same everywhere. This is the battle. This is the big battle happening here. And this is the major change President Trump did. He stood with the pragmatists against the realistic radicals. Same with the question of the nuclear deal. Trump says, what are we doing? This deal is going to make the realistic radicals owners, the Shiite realistic radicals, owners of a big arsenal of nuclear weapons, and there's nothing we are going to be able to do about it if we let this deal go on. And they will threaten their enemies in the Middle East, and later on they will threaten the entire world, because they are building those long-range ballistic missiles. So what is that? We cannot allow that to happen. We have to stop it. And the entire realistic radicals in the Middle East lost their main backer in practice, not in ideology. The main backer in practice, the group of people who allowed them to move forward, were taken out of the scene and replaced by somebody who's working against them. This is why the Iranians are extremely concerned. This is why Qatar and Turkey are working so hard, to change the situation. And the battle in the West on this new policy is not finished, not at all. Because the Europeans are still there, still with the policy of up to 2016. And even some people in the United States are still there. So the big battle in the United States and in the West in general about what policy should we adopt vis-a-vis the big battles that's happening in the Middle East, and there's a big battle in the Middle East itself. What happened in this last year and how it's going to affect next year? So I said, the rift became harsher. One group lost a lot of assets out of those four groups that I mentioned. And this is the ultra-radical Sunnis. Okay? We all know ISIS and so on and so forth. They were not defeated, but they lost a lot of assets. They still have a very strong base in the minds and the hearts of many Muslims, and this is important. They still control certain territories, especially their presence in Sinai and other places, still even in Iraq and Syria. And they can still operate through their supporters all over the world and carry out terror attacks, because they are all over the world. They have supporters all over the world. But they definitely are in a bad shape compared with what they were before. The Shiite radicals, led by Iran, gain a lot of power. Because in one of the main battlefields, that is Syria, the new approach that I mentioned before was not translated into anything on the ground. It remained the same. And the Americans were not ready to take any steps, and even if you follow what Secretary Tillerson said a week ago about what are the priorities of the United States in America, still diminishing the power, not putting an end to the power, just diminishing the power of Iran is number 3 in Syria, power of Iran in Syria. It's only number 3. And very little is being done about it, which I'll say a word in a minute, how it affects Israel. But the Iranian axis won quite considerably, building on the limited readiness of its opponents to pay the price that goes with a real effort to put pressure on the Iranians. We see all kinds of things boiling right now, but until now, nothing happened. And the pragmatic group also gained power, because they got now the support of the United States administration, they got the support of Israel, who's keeping close relations with them, and they got a more impressive leadership than they used to have in the past. With people like Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and General Sisi as the president of Egypt, they finally have some leadership that can understand what needs to be done and understand that they are in an existential battle for their position in the Middle East, and in an existential battle, you do what you need to do. And, many of the Western spectators don't understand it and believe that they should fight the wars the way they do in the British Parliament. But this is a different kind of a war. You need to adopt different tools and rules when you fight. And the Sunni realistic radicals are losing ground as well. That's why you see Hamas under such pressure. In 2014, for example, when this all started and Sisi took over in Egypt, Hamas thought that by waging a war they can change the situation because they had somebody in the international arena that was ready to allow the realistic radicals to support them, and was very keen on bringing into the equation Qatar and Turkey. But today, this is out of the question. So Hamas is in a bad shape, and they try to find a way out, but it's not easy for them. And so are the Turks, and so are the Qataris. They are in a bad shape. They're fighting back. Of course, nobody is giving up easily, but they are under a lot of pressure. That's the general picture of the Middle East. I'll say a word about the Palestinian issue, and then I'll overly and saying something about that from the point of Israel. What happened to the Palestinian issue is the same thing. The international scene has changed. And since the Arab scene has also changed, as I described until now, the Palestinians found themselves in a situation where the entire structure of deterrence, virtual deterrence by the way, but never mind, still deterrence, that they have built for ages, started to melt down, evaporate, and disappear. And for ages they told the world, you cannot touch us, because if you do, the skies are going to fall. You cannot tell us not to pay salaries to terrorists, because we are victims and you cannot tell a victim what to do. You cannot recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel because this is totally unacceptable in the entire world and nothing in the entire Arab world, and God knows what's going to happen. You cannot say anything about UNRWA because we are victims and we are refugees and you owe us. And the new approach coming from Washington was, really? Let's put it to a test. And let's base our policy on real facts and not on the virtual reality that you're creating here. And yes, we are trying, says the Washingtonians, we are trying to promote peace, but this peace is going to be based on realities, not on faked narrative that you have. And that's why the Palestinians are so concerned with the recognition move of President Trump. It's not about the recognition itself, which is important, but not the issue. The issue is that this recognition says your narrative is fake. You say the Jews don't have anything to do with Jerusalem. I tell you, they do have. You say, and these are all the elements of the fake Palestinian narrative. You say there's no Jewish people. And everything I tell you now, I didn't know that Abu Mazen was going to tell to his own people a few days ago, but I derive it from Abu Mazen's book, Zionism, Beginning and End, the book he wrote in '77. He hasn't changed one bit in the way he thinks about the conflict. And the fake narrative is that there's no Jewish people. Judaism was imposed on the Jews, those who believe in the Jewish religion, by Zionism was imposed on them by the colonialist powers, the Campbell Bannerman summit of 1905 or something like that, and so on and so forth. Jews are problematic, Zionists. Now we have to differentiate between the Zionists and the Jews. The Jews maybe are all right. No, actually they're not, but they never get out of this issue of this. The Zionists or the Jews that are unacceptable. But the Zionists are definitely unacceptable, okay? Amongst other things because they are Jews. And this was the reason why the Europeans wanted to get rid of them and send them to the Middle East to serve as a colonialist bridgehead in the Middle East. So this is totally unacceptable, and the British should compensate us for that. And the Jews don't have any historical sovereignty in this piece of land. They never found any archaeological piece that would prove that they actually had a state here. And so there was no temple, and so on and so forth. It's all this fake narrative. And we, the Palestinians, we are the descendants of the Canaanites. If you didn't laugh until now, something is wrong with you. And this narrative also says that because of all of that, because the Jews don't have a right to a state of their own here, then we have the right to fight against them until we kick them out. And that's why we pay salaries to our heroes, to those who fight. Now comes, and there are some other elements in it that are also important. That, our fight is both national and religious at the same time. You cannot separate between it. Between the two elements. If you listen to Abu Mazen yesterday, the other week, he used a lot the term ribat, which is an Islamic term of defending the lands ruled by Islam, to describe what the Palestinians are doing. So they actually fight for Islam, not just for the nation. Anyhow, President Trump, by recognizing Jerusalem as the nation as the capital of the nation state of the Jewish people, he recognizes that there is the Jewish people, that this Jewish people has a history of 3,000 years that is very strongly connected to the land of Israel, actually told the Palestinians, listen, I don't take anything from your fake narrative. And that's why the Palestinians are so disturbed and frustrated.
Maybe we should also...
Just a second, a word about Israel, okay? And so what's going to happen in the Palestinian issue next year and how it's going to affect Israel? We know some of the things that are going to happen. For example, the Taylor Force Act is going to be adopted, which means the Palestinians are going to lose a couple of hundred millions of dollars. Second thing, we know that the Knesset is going to adopt a law that says that Israel is going to deduct a considerable part of the money it delivers to the Palestinians every month, as long as the Palestinians don't stop paying salaries to terrorists. Which means that the Palestinians are going to lose another couple of hundreds of shekels, millions of shekels. That's what's going to happen in the next time. And what the Palestinians are worried about most is that with the challenging of their fake narrative, some Arab states, because of what I said before about what's happening in the wider picture, and because they are becoming closer to Israel, and understand the importance of Israel for them, would challenge another element in the Palestinian narrative that says that you cannot promote normalization with Israel before Israel gives up to the Palestinian demands. And if you follow what Abu Mazen said last week, he warned about it. He said, my brother Arabs, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't change the order. But this means that he has a reason to believe that something of this kind may happen. So what of all of that last question, sentence, what all of that means to Israel? First of all, we have a lot of challenges in front of us because of the growing power of the Iranians in the Middle East. Everything they do is, in one way or another, connected to their commitment to harm Israel and to, if possible, dismantle it. So we have a lot of challenges, mainly in Syria. We have to will have to continue mowing the grass over there and prevent the Iranians from bringing in weapons, prevent the Iranians from having bases there, prevent the Iranians from having terrorist bases along our borders. We see that they're trying now with Hamas, they tried with the Islamic Jihad, they tried with Hezbollah, they tried with all kinds of people. We have to keep working in order to prevent that from happening. Secondly, and related to that, is that we have all kinds of opportunities. First, in the context of Iran, we have an opportunity here because the President has said, the President of the United States has said, that in 4 months, if nothing happens, he's going to resume the sanctions against Iran and pull out from the agreement. And this is extremely important because this is going to block the Iranians from moving towards a nuclear weapon. This is wonderful. Another opportunity we have is that the Arabs understand our importance more and more. The pragmatic Arabs, I mean. And there's an opening here. There's a chance here that we shall have an option of really changing this order of events as Abu Mazen was trying to prevent. If we manage, together with everything else that I mentioned, the falling of the Palestinian narrative, there is a chance that some Palestinians, not a big chance, maybe not this year, maybe only in a couple of years, that some Palestinians will say, well, maybe we should change this narrative. How about if we actually put more emphasis on having good life for ourselves instead of basing all our narrative on denying the right of the Jews to have a place here? And if somebody in the Palestinian arena will start murmuring about this option, it may gain traction. And as I said, maybe not this year. This year they are going to kick with their legs in the air and shout and scream. But the seeds are there for a change that would, for us, of course, is a very good opportunity because it may bring a totally different framework for our relations with our neighbors, the Palestinians. I'll stop here for questions.
Thank
you. Melanie Fitz from the Times of London. You talked about Syria, and you said the Trump doctrine didn't apply in Syria, and you said that was the reason. That the reason was that the Americans were not prepared to pay the price of taking on Iran in Syria. What would that actually look like if Trump were to implement his new doctrine in Syria and take on Iran in Syria? What would we be seeing him doing?
Well, first of all, he has a very obvious tool that he doesn't use in this context, and this is sanctions. Sanctions are there for human rights, for human rights in Iran, for ballistic missiles. People speak about sanctions and a lot of issues, okay, selling arms, things like that. But for harming the rights of the Syrian people, there's no price. And you can bring in 80,000 or so troops that work under your command and make sure that a person who carried out attacks with chemical weapons against his own people will stay in power, and still you pay no price for that. There's got to be some price tag for that. Secondly, the opponents of this policy are eagerly looking for some more practical support. All the ideas that were on the table at the time were never materialized. Safe zones, no-fly zones, all of that was never materialized. And actually, the leadership on the issue of Syria was left in the hands of the Russians and the Iranians that work with them. And this enabled Assad to stay in power. Now, this is something that, from an American point of view and from some of the Europeans' point of view, is unacceptable. But if you're not willing to do anything in order to make it look different, then it's not going to look different. And that leaves us with the task of handling the Iranian threat in Syria by ourselves, which we do quite well, but this shouldn't have been like that. The Americans can and should take a more decisive approach to the Iranian presence in Syria.
Thank you, from the Jerusalem Post. And you mentioned the Bassam and the Palestinians maybe wanting to have a new generation changing the narrative to be a bit more pragmatic. But on the ground, do you see that anyway? The names, even within Fatah, not talking about Hamas, but even within Fatah, the names that are being bandied around as possible successors, that they're all terrorists. I mean, Dahlan and also, do you see a role for Jordan in this, and how is Jordan's very precarious situation, and is it related?
Well, you know, when Sadat declared that he wants to come to the farthest place, to Jerusalem, to make peace with Israel, some people in Israel couldn't believe him. They still believe that he is actually it's a part of some trick in which he's actually going to launch war against us. It's not. He doesn't mean it. It's because when new ideas like that are boiling, somebody usually keeps some lid on the pot to make sure that nobody sees it. So it's difficult to notice it. And the same happened same is happening now in the Arab world. You see many more voices saying, well, maybe we should change our approach to Israel. And every day there is somebody who's sending this message. And they are courageous enough, the governments are already allowing them to do that. So it's a message the Palestinians hear very clearly. They hear it much better than we do because it's in their language. The concerns of Abu Mazen were not unbased, baseless. And in the Palestinian community, I sat with many Palestinians in all kinds of fora, and when you sit like that, you hear them saying, well, yes, it's true. Our narrative is really fake. It's a wrong narrative. Somebody told me once that he went to see Arafat when he was still alive. He told him, listen, Abu Ammar, why do we keep saying that there was no temple? Between us, we know there was a temple, huh? and Abu Ammar told him, my friend, what is your monthly allowance? I said, okay, no temple. I got it. But it's not that they don't know that this is a thing. Do you think that the Palestinians really believe that they are descendants of Canaanites? They know they don't.
the leadership potential.
Yeah, so what I'm saying, that the leadership is going to continue speaking this way. By the way, the more the Palestinian leadership spends efforts and resources on washing the brains of the Palestinians to stick to this narrative, the more this indoctrination goes on, this hate indoctrination goes on, the more you realize that they know that their people don't buy it. That there is a problem here. You have to invest a lot to convince your own people to believe in it. So there is a ray of hope there. It's not easy because they do it very intensively. It's not going to be easy to change. It's going to be a terrible and very painful process for the Palestinians to come to reality. Very painful. And most of them don't want to go there. Many of them. I wouldn't even say most of them don't want to go there. To go there as long as they can stick to this current narrative. Because when you stick to this current narrative, you stick to the struggle, and never-ending struggle narrative. It's very good. Many people pay you for that. You can have good life and struggle at the same time. What the Americans are telling them now, listen, this summer camp is over. You cannot have it both ways. You have to decide. You want to have good life or you want to stick to the struggle narrative. And it's the first time that they are being told this. Nobody dared to tell them before. Not even many Israelis dare to. Many Israelis say, oh, but let's not shake the boat. Let's not shake the boat. Who knows if we cut the funds for UNRWA? Who knows what's going to happen? It's no. What the new approach says to them, enough. Face reality. Paying salaries to terrorists is a no-brainer. We are not going to support it. We are not going to pay you in order to pay people that kill us. That's not going to happen. And for the first time, people telling them this obvious message. I saw, by the way, some British officials speaking in Parliament and ignoring it when it was raised in Parliament just 2 weeks ago. So Europe is still there for them. When Abu Mazen comes to the European Parliament, everybody hugs him, and nobody raises the issue that their money of the Europeans is being used in order to kill the Israelis because they paid the salaries to the terrorists with the money of the Europeans. They say, our money doesn't go there. Who cares? So your money goes to something else, but then your money is fungible. The same money that was supposed to go to something else goes for paying the salaries to the terrorists. But the Europeans are not strong enough element to base their entire concept on. So yes. Oh, you.
Yes, Michael Arnold from Bloomberg News. I wanted to ask about the Europeans. You know, as you mentioned, the U.S. is finally starting to give the Palestinians this message that the summer camp is over. But you know, Europe, as you say, isn't doing it yet. I mean, behind the scenes, do you get the sense that Europe is trying to, push them to change their narrative, to compromise with UNRWA and things like that, or is it still kind of unqualified support?
I would say that one thing I feel is that the Europeans know that something is wrong with their own position. Okay? They feel uncomfortable with their position. But I haven't seen yet any move that would indicate that they are ready to change anything. And unfortunately, the Europeans have are very well trained in sticking to uncomfortable positions. Okay, so they don't feel strange when they're there. We see it around all over the spectrum, on many issues. I mean, for example, they can live with the approach that says that Hezbollah's military part is a terror organization, but the political part is not a terror organization.
So what would it take to shake Europe out of that position, to get them to moderate the Palestinians?
Well, I just don't want that to happen. And even when it happens, it's not enough probably. We had a lady here from Britain that was stabbed, I think, 16 times, right? And her friend, her American friend, was killed, stabbed to murder. And she complained to the British Parliament saying, how can you pay salaries to those people who stabbed me 16 times? And the answer was, we don't pay directly to this guy. Very nice. It's really, only a shameless person can say something better. They know that something is wrong, and somehow they manage to live with it. I think that if, God forbid, something else happens of this kind, maybe they will wake up. Listen, even for the Americans, the idea of tailor force, being an American retired soldier, made a lot of impact. As long as this was only the Israelis, it was less pressing to do something about it. This is amazing, but this is the case. And, I hope that they would not need that in order to understand that they're wrong. One thing I can tell you, I heard from certain European officials that if the United States and Israel take steps against this idea of paying salaries to terrorists by the Palestinians, they will not fill in. Not that it is very impressive, but it's better than if they did.
Last
Carrie,
question.
yes, thank you. Carrie Hart with Network Global News. Two questions. One is that, so are you alluding to the fact that it's possible that a new U.S. peace initiative could bypass the Palestinians, go directly to the Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Gulf states because of the obstinance of the Palestinians, and that the Arabs would actually do that? And secondly, if there's sanctions against Iran by the United States, but Europe keeps being a player with Iran, how effective will that be? And is it possible that Iran will start threatening the United States with war if they make any changes to the joint agreement?
Well, everything is possible. Even the Palestinians, the small Palestinians threaten the United States and the war as if they were lying. Everybody can shout in the direction of the United States. But it's not always a good policy. So, because the United States is still bigger than the Palestinians and still much bigger than the Iranians as well. So I'm not sure that this is a very wise policy, although people may take it and listen. The Palestinians, for example, refuse to communicate with the Americans. Good for them. It's coming back to the questions. The Palestinians cannot be ignored when you come to deal with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So I don't think that the U.S. is going to move forward with a peace plan without the Palestinians and going directly to the Arabs. But what can be done, and this is, as I said before, this is what Abu Mazen is so worried about, is that if he says, and that's what he's saying, I don't want to hear about this plan, I don't want to see this plan, then the Arabs will tell him, listen, if you don't want to hear this plan, if you don't want to listen to this plan, so we are not anymore committed to this order that you force upon us, because we want you to see this plan. We have a feeling that this plan is good for you. And okay, we want to hear your voice and your opinion about it, but if you don't want to see and listen to this plan, there's a price attached to it. We shall move with the Israelis and with the Americans on issues that are important to us, and we shall not remain hostages of your approach. And this is the big fear of Abu Mazen, that this is going to happen. That's why he's caught between two. He doesn't want the plan, because the plan is not probably in line with his narrative. But he can't afford not having the plan, because the world is not going to stay where it is. If you don't want the plan, there's a price to that. And he knows there is a price. He's afraid of the price. Because if listen, what happened with Egypt at the time was a problem for the Palestinians. What happened with Jordan was a problem for the Palestinians. They lost leverage. Fortunately, there was a government in Israel at the time that was so eager to give them leverage that gave them all kinds of things that they never dreamt that they would be able to get. But right now, if they are going to lose the leverage of the Arab world, it's very bad for them. And that's what is in the cards now. And I think that's why Abu Mazen is so afraid. About the Iranian issue. First of all, I think it's very important to point at what Prime Minister Netanyahu was saying in Davos yesterday, and to what President Trump said in the communique issued when he spoke about the 120 days. The changes that need to take place in the Iran nuclear deal have to be significant ones, not marginal and superficial. Handling just the missiles is not enough. Definitely not from the point of view of Israel. But the Iranians already have missiles that reach Israel. Maybe the missiles are important to Europe, but from an Israeli point of view, the missiles by themselves are not enough. The issue of monitoring has to be addressed, because right now there is no monitoring. There is no monitoring. There's monitoring, there's good monitoring only in the places declared by the Iranians. There's no monitoring in other places. In the military facilities, there's no monitoring. And why would the Iranians do the wrong stuff that they want to do in the places that are under monitoring? When they have so many other places that are not under monitoring. So it's really ridiculous. There's no monitoring. The Obama message about anywhere, anytime is ridiculously wrong. Second, the issue of the sunset article, the idea that this is going to come to an end at a certain point of time, and then Iran would not be under any limits that really prevents it from having a nuclear weapon, is totally unacceptable. Because according to this deal, what was the problem of the Iranians? The problem of the Iranians was that they couldn't cross the threshold between where they were standing and enough fissile material for the first bomb. First bomb. They couldn't cross the threshold to the first bomb. Because both the Americans and Netanyahu were telling them, listen, this is a red line. This is the famous chart of Netanyahu in the UN. Told them, listen, if you're going to accumulate more than 250 kilograms of uranium and reach to 20%, you cross a red line. So they couldn't cross this red line, and they didn't. What is the Iranian deal tell the Iranians? You can have any kind of centrifuges you want, and they are working, as we speak, on the IR-8, that is many, many times more efficient than the IR-1 and 2 that they have. You can have as many centrifuges of this kind as you want. You keep all the facilities you have, including the Fordow underground facility that even President Obama said it's totally unacceptable that they will have it. But you keep all of them. And from year 10, which is now year 8, because 2 years have already elapsed, from year 8, you are able to enrich as much uranium to 3.5% as you like. Now let me tell you something. 3.5% is something like 40% to 50% of the way to 90%, which is the military grade. It's only 3.5%, huh? No, it's not only. It's a very important stage. And from year 13, which originally was year 15, from year 13, you can enrich uranium to any level you want, in any quantity you want. So you actually can accumulate enormous amount of military grade enriched uranium, and from there to turn it into a nuclear weapon is it's peanuts. That's the deal, that's this terrible deal. So how can we live with this deal? I don't understand the people who signed this deal. Totally irresponsible. And that's why we need a significant, real change in this deal. So that, as the President of the United States saying, and Vice President Pence was saying here, we shall not let the Iranians have the capability to produce those weapons. They will not have this arsenal of nuclear weapons. That's so important. Now, if the United States takes the sanctions, as you asked, to prevent the Iranians from moving there, and the Europeans will have to choose between having good relations and free trade with the United States or having free trade with Iran, I have a feeling that they would choose the United States. I also have, I hope this is not a wishful thinking, but I think that they will choose the United States. Still a little bit bigger market, little bit. So I believe that it's not about how many countries will support the step of the American president. It's about how strong you are. And the American president has enough power in order to force the Europeans to change this agreement. Now, until now, they didn't believe that he really means what he says. But everything he did ever since he declared it proves that in certain issues he means what he says. Like, for example, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Okay? He said it, he did it. Moving the embassy. It's very important for him to move the embassy because it's another matter of whether he sticks to what he says. It's about credibility. And a credible United States can achieve much more than anybody else.
Yossi, thank you very much. As
Thank
a
you.
token of gratitude, we wanted to give you a membership card. So you're now a member of the JPC. So